Hey guys, it's Jordan with National Speed, and today we're talking about this. And that is our Stage-2 Naturally Aspirated package for 2018 to 2021 Ford Mustang GT. Now, if your Mustang's stock and you want to optimize your performance without adding a supercharger or a turbocharger, then this package is absolutely the way to go. Serious performance increase at every RPM, all the good sounds that you want, and all around more fun behind the wheel. And all of this is achieved while retaining daily drivability and stock-like reliability without negatively impacting your fuel economy, assuming you can keep your foot out of it. Now, one of the cool things about our stage performance packages is that each stage builds on the previous. What that means is that this Stage 2 package also includes everything from Stage 1. So in this video, we'll go over the contents of both our Stage 1 and Stage 2 packages, and then we'll follow along in the shop as each package is installed and tuned on our test automatic 2021 Ford Mustang GT, showing the back-to-back differences. This will illustrate not only the performance gains over stock, but also going from Stage 1 to Stage 2. First, our Stage 1 package includes a JLT performance air intake system and a custom calibration by HP tuners, with options including the Reische Performance 170-degree thermostat, J&L air oil separator, and a flex fuel calibration. Stage 2 wraps all of this up and adds in stainless work, stainless power long tube headers. And with that, let's get started. Up first, let's baseline our test Mustang to get a starting point for horsepower and torque. Alright, looks like we're starting with 409 wheel horsepower and 387 pound-feet of torque, right where we'd expect. Now, let's get Stage 1 installed and tuned. First, the JLT Performance air intake system gets installed. In our experience, this intake is the most cost-effective solution on the market for these cars. Great fit, finish, and performance for a very competitive price point. And with the intake system installed, Vibe gets started on the calibration by HP tuners. Alright, solid jump in performance here, coming in at 430 wheel horsepower and 403 pound-feet of torque. That's peak gains of 21 wheel horsepower and 16 pound-feet of torque, with maximum gains coming in at 29 wheel horsepower and 29 pound-feet of torque. And power aside, you can really hear that coyote breathe now. And up next, our Mustang heads back to the shop to go on the lift and have the Stage 2 edition added, the stainless work, stainless power long tube headers with high flow catalytic converters. And back to the dyno for fly to dial into calibration. Oh yeah, that definitely shows up, coming in at 459 wheel horsepower and 422 pound-feet of torque. Over stock, peak gains of 50 wheel horsepower and 35 pound-feet of torque, with maximum gains coming in at 57 horsepower and 60 pound-feet of torque. Now, let's run through the options that I mentioned earlier in the video. Up first, we have the J&L air oil separator. In short, this part keeps oil from being ingested by your engine, which results in more consistent power delivery and less carbon buildup, which means less required maintenance down the road. You won't see the difference on the dyno, but you will certainly see the benefit over time. Now, if you're interested in learning more about the J&L air oil separator for your Mustang, check out our channel to find the video we did covering this exact topic. Next, we have the Reische Performance 170-degree thermostat. This lower temperature thermostat allows your engine to run cooler without affecting your warm-up time or your heater performance. And one benefit of this that may surprise you is that yes, this does show up on the dyno with our custom calibration. Due to the lower operating temperature, the engine will accept more ignition timing and as a result, makes more power. We typically see anywhere between 3 to 5 extra horsepower at the wheels. And our favorite option with this package is our flex fuel calibration. In short, this allows you to run 93 octane, E85, or any variation in between, all without having to change the calibration file. And let me tell you, this difference definitely shows up on the dyno. Typical gains come in somewhere between 25 and 30 wheel horsepower and 20 and 25 pound-feet of torque. Alright, with the options installed, let's see the impact the thermostat had on our numbers. After dialing in the calibration, output jumped up as expected. 465 wheel horsepower and 423 pound-feet of torque. That's peak gains of 5 wheel horsepower and around 1 pound-feet of torque. And Vlad proceeds with getting the flex fuel calibration dialed in. Oh yeah, that shows up big time, coming in at 492 wheel horsepower and 443 pound-feet of torque. Peak gains over 93 octane of 28 wheel horsepower and 20 pound-feet of torque, with maximum gains coming in at 31 wheel horsepower and 25 pound-feet of torque. Alright, it goes without saying that this is painfully close to that 500 wheel horsepower mark. And if this had been a manual transmission vehicle, or if this car had exhaust on it, it would definitely be there. Pretty crazy results for just a couple bolt-ons and some fuel. Now, let's step through these results. Stock baseline of 409 wheel horsepower and 387 pound-feet of torque. Stage 1 increased output to 430 wheel horsepower and 403 pound-feet of torque. That's peak gains of 21 wheel horsepower and 16 pound-feet of torque, with maximum gains coming in at 29 wheel horsepower and 29 pound-feet of torque. Stage 2 increased output to 459 wheel horsepower and 422 pound-feet of torque. Over Stage 1, it's peak gains of 21 wheel horsepower and 16 pound-feet of torque, with maximum gains coming in at 29 wheel horsepower and 29 pound-feet of torque. And over stock, peak gains of 50 wheel horsepower and 35 pound-feet of torque, with maximum gains coming in at 57 wheel horsepower and 60 pound-feet of torque. The optional thermostat increased output to 465 wheel horsepower and 423 pound-feet of torque. Its peak gains of 5 wheel horsepower and around 1 pound-feet of torque. An optional flex fuel increased output to 492 wheel horsepower and 443 pound-feet of torque. Peak gains over 93 octane of 28 wheel horsepower and 20 pound-feet of torque, with maximum gains coming in at 31 wheel horsepower and 25 pound-feet of torque. And peak gains over stock of 83 wheel horsepower and 56 pound-feet of torque, with maximum gains coming in at 91 wheel horsepower and 70 pound-feet of torque. Alright guys, well there you have it. If you like this information, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay tuned for more. And as always, if you have any questions at all, we're happy to chat. Thanks for watching.